It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
What is happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts.
And I'm Sara Lucy, and this is Brandon, your comprehensive guide to creative branding.
And on this episode of the podcast, we have an amazing guest with us today. This guy blows my mind every time I see him. You know, Sara and I, we go to a lot of conferences. That's how we get out there and meet people and build our brand. Whether it's a podcast conference or Sara goes to FinCon, which is kind of a podcast conference too, or it's a business conference, we run into a lot of advertisers. You know, they've always got that. What are those called, Sara? I can't even think of the name of it. Where they set up the tables. What's that called?
Exhibition booths?
That's it right there. It's an exhibition
Sponsor
booth.
Something like
exhibition,
that.
Exhibitions.
They are exhibitions.
I need more Monster this morning. But no, when we see these exhibitors, how's that? But we see these exhibitors out there, and I'll tell you, regardless of the conference that I'm at, there's not one booth that stands out as well as these guys' booth. It is amazing. The name of their company is MowPod, and they specialize in podcast advertising. But this is one half of their dynamic duo, and his name is Joe Rubin. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on today. This is great.
And again, I can't say enough cool things about you guys. You really have this very unique, I'll call it an aura to your brand that just really, it stands out regardless of the conference. And again, I go to conferences all the freaking time, and I've never seen another company stand out at a conference the way that you and Mike do. That
is good to hear, honestly, because that is my goal. And mission accomplished. So I can go home today. This is good. I'm calling it a day.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Time to retire.
No, it is good to hear, actually, because that is really our goal is to stand out and to be noticed. You mentioned it earlier, there's tons of booths, and that is how you go, and that's how you get noticed. And that's what we do as well. We pick the good conferences to go to, and we show up, and we try to make everybody know that we're there, right? We paid the money, right? We're spending all the cash and the airplane tickets and the hotels and the food and the sponsorship fees and the booth table costs and all the shit that goes around with it. Like, I don't want to go home and be like, that's pretty good. Like, maybe someone will call me, like, I want to go there and like rock it, Right. I want to own that. And that's our goal. And it works, I think. You do it. I see you there all the time. And, that's how it is. You got to brand yourself. You got to make sure people know that you're there and drum up business.
So tell me the kind of the backstory on MowPod. How did it actually get started? And I mean, what was the birth of your brand?
Yeah. So we started in the newsletter space, actually. We were sending subscribers to companies like Morning Brew, before they got acquired, and The Hustle before they got acquired, and dozens of other newsletters where they were looking for just email subscribers. So we had nothing to do with podcasts at all when we started. And then they started asking us, hey, we also have a podcast. Can you send people to our podcast? And we're like, no, we can't do that. I don't know anything about it. So we said no like 5 times to all these people. And finally we're like, we're leaving a lot of potential money on the table here. We got to learn what a freaking podcast is and start doing this, So we didn't want to go in and just be like, oh yeah, now we can advertise your podcast. Sure. Like we were like, all right, we need to feel the pain and understand what a podcast is, how it works. What are the ins and outs, like, and talk the talk and be able to sound smart about podcasts before we got in there and started selling services to podcasters and then you sound like a dumbass, right? Like, I hate when I get calls and people try to sell me and I know more about what they're doing than they do, right? Like, I hate that. So I wanted to be an expert. I wanted to, me and Mike, we wanted to know what the hell we were doing. So we set up our own podcast. As you can imagine, the first one was a smashing piece of shit. It sucked. We didn't know what we were doing.
We have officially lost our clean rating just from this episode already.
Sorry, was I supposed to not cuss? I'm sorry.
Not at all. You're fine, man.
You're fine.
I drop bombs from time to time.
You have to put that adult rating on the side. This
is branded explicit.
No,
so it sounded like crap. Okay, so we were like, all right, let's figure this out. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to record it, and my microphone sucked, and like you heard the echo, and it was like it was just garbage, right? And I'm like, I can't sell something like this and sound smart. So we started working on it. We started getting better at doing our own podcast and figuring it out. And finally, we're like, all right, we now understand what podcasting is. We understand the technologies in the space. Let's try to promote it and see if it works. And once again, we started up and it sucked, right? Like it was like, well, we just blew a lot of our own money and nobody's listening. Like that was garbage, right? So we just did that for a while. And then finally we're like, all right, we're getting pretty good at this, and once we got to be a point where we're like, this is legitimate. We know, we kind of know about podcasting now. We know about advertising podcasting and what it takes, what the metrics look like and what we're supposed to do and how to potentially even make some money on this. And, to get it down to our cost down where our costs are less than, what we're charging. And we went out there and we're like, hey, we're going to give it a shot. You're beta customer number one. We may not do great at all, in which case, it's on us. We'll eat the whole thing. And people are like, okay, sure. It's on you. Sure. Right. So we went out with that approach. And then we started getting pretty good at it. We didn't make decent money at first. Sometimes we won, we lost a little bit, maybe we made it okay. But we started selling it on that performance guarantee, right? Where we weren't going to just say, all right, give me an arbitrary amount of money and we'll give you an arbitrary amount of listeners, right? We were like, here's what you're going to buy. Here's what we're going to deliver. And if we don't deliver, we're just going to keep delivering until we deliver. And if we stop making money and it's out of our pocket, well, that's on us, right? And people are like, sure, I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm paying for. And if you screw up, it's on you and it's up to you to take the risk.
Sure.
So that was sort of the backstory on that. And people like that business model.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're throwing it out there and, you're taking that hit. You're taking on all the risk. And I think a lot of people tend to overlook that fact, not just at you specifically, but at building a brand or building a business. You have to put it out there. I mean, we hear guys like Gary Vee and these Alex Ramosi's and all these cat daddies that are out there talking about you have to give. And you've built an amazing business that's globally recognized for what it does. And you started off by doing what? Giving. You said, we will do this for you and we eat the cost if we have to. And you built on that. Not only did you prove your concept, you learned along the way. And that's a sacrifice that a lot of people aren't willing to make. So what is it from an internal character perspective that allowed you to go, this is what we have to do to make this work?
It's an entrepreneurial mindset. I've been in the entrepreneur space since like 2000. I started my own company, raised my own capital back in like the .com bubble, before the bubble burst, obviously, and the .com boom. That's the term. So yeah. I've been in this space for a while, and I understand that if you're not going to take any risk, you're in the wrong space. You gotta put it out there, and you have to be prepared to lose some money at first and experiment and screw it up and fail and hear lots of no's and take all of that feedback to heart and figure out if what you're doing is still worth it and if you should continue down that path or if you should change it up somehow and figure something else out. And that's just what you have to do. And like even today, it wasn't today, yesterday, still I lost money on a campaign. I screwed it up.
Yeah.
We over delivered and the customer was happy and I lost money. It still happens. We were trying something new.
That wasn't on our account, was it? Was that our account?
You did.
Did we crush it yesterday? And I haven't seen the numbers yet.
No, we did all right. But
okay.
it was just another account. It just happens. We were trying something new, trying about a new piece of technology. That our thing is building the technology around this to make this easier, streamlined. We're an ad tech company, so we're constantly innovating the technologies, and sometimes we screw it up and there's a bug and it just doesn't happen. It happened yesterday. So, but that's sort of the mindset that you have to be in. And I kicked myself in the butt, for losing some cash and I went on and I fixed the problem and tried to make it better.
No, I was actually thinking with what you were saying before with starting your podcast and everything, pod fade is just so prevalent, and that's just people start a podcast and they just give up. And you made me think, like, one of the reasons that it is that way is because with this, you're trying something, and if you're failing publicly. And that can make it so much more difficult because you're putting out this content and then you look back and realize, okay, that sucked, but people already saw it. So that makes it so much more difficult. How do you get around that? Like, how did you get yourselves to just keep going?
So we use it. Well, so two things. One, we use it. It's not just a podcast. We originally started it as this test experiment bed, right? So the podcast was cool, but the actual coolness of the podcast is it sort of grew on a life of its own, which was really cool. Now we love doing the podcast. Yeah, we still run our ads to the podcast, and we still expand and push our own podcast. Obviously, we're still eating our own cooking, but we love doing it. I'm actually recording another episode tonight. It's a great podcast. We have so much fun doing it. And if you don't have fun doing it, you need to stop doing it, right? If you hate doing it, it's like people start podcasts like, oh, let me just start it. And a lot of people started the podcast as, I'm sure you remember, over the pandemic, right? I'm stuck at home. I can't do anything. Hey, let me start a podcast, right? So there was definitely a big bump of starting podcasts and failing podcasts, all at the same time. Because, I'm 3 episodes in and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't really like this, and I sound like crap, and I have nothing interesting to actually say. And, so there was a lot of that. But still, to your question, even people who are doing a good job and have something interesting to say, have that pod fade effect where, I'm 25 episodes in and now it's gone, right? Like, so there's definitely some of that where even if you're pretty good at it, you burn out or you get bored or something happens and you stop, so.
The podcast has been such a critical component to everything that you're doing. And I mean, we're not sitting here pitching podcasts. Well, maybe we are. But at the same time, that your podcast has helped you build a community that's around your brand. And that's something that I've seen you guys do on a whole other level, because again, mentioning you at the conferences and whatnot, not only do you have, you have your MowPod groupies they're following you everywhere, right? But you guys also sponsor all the after parties. Your podcast is a karaoke podcast. So people come on your podcast and they do karaoke, right?
Exactly. And I try to tie those things in together nicely, right? So the podcast is called Friday Night Karaoke. And when we go to conferences, we're sponsoring, like you said, the after party. And often the after party is a big karaoke party, right?
Yeah.
So we try to tie it all in. And then, of course, we're filming at the party and posting it on the web page for Friday Night Karaoke and posting it on the MowPod page. Like, there's a lot of crossover, and we try to use this sounds technical though, like you try to use those assets wisely, right? But like we try to build in the crossover.
Repurpose that content.
Yeah, we try to make everyone have a good time, and to the previous point, we're there, we're throwing the after party. I want people to remember us there. We try to, the groupies, I guess, like you said, maybe it's a few, but it's because
I include myself in that clique, in the whole groupie clique, because I'm like, where's Mike and Joe? I want to be where they're at. Where are they at? Oh, they're at the party. Now, I will admit though that the after parties, I typically just make a pass. I show up and I make a round, and then I might exit because I am so old and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I can't do this, but I need to, I want to, I feel like I miss out every time. And I think that's more of my point, is that I feel I have that FOMO, I want to be there, but my old ass just can't keep up. So you guys do an amazing job of doing that. And every after party that you guys throw is slammed. And people are literally talking about it through the conference. Oh, when is karaoke? When's the party? When's the MowPod party? And you guys have done such a tremendous job of tying that all together and building that community around your brand. So you've got these hardcore supporters, and we'll call them groupies just for fun, but you've done such a tremendous job there, and you're tying all these components together. Was that intentional, or did you stumble through that process and go, oh, this whole community thing, this is a huge benefit to the brand?
Even if it was an accident, I'd say it was intentional, but it actually was intentional. We love throwing the after party. Everything that we do is like, we're good at throwing parties. We love doing it. I love nothing more than walking around with a bottle of whiskey or Fireball and just like and pouring it over into people and getting everybody to have a great time and getting people
You are
drunk
the ultimate bottle girl.
yes, I am definitely a shot girl, like in it at heart, like that's it. It's
Rebranding.
it's something that we love doing. And the funny thing is that even there's been a lot of people that would hang out with us and have drinks with us and come to our parties and chill. And then after like hours and we're having a great time, they're like, what do you do anyway? It's a weird problem to have, is often like the brand dominates what we actually do. Like people know the brand. Oh, I recognize, like you said, the t-shirt. I know the t-shirt. I know the brand. You got nice. I love the logo, and you hanging out and you're buying me drinks and we sing at karaoke. And then like the next day people are like, that was awesome. Like you guys are awesome. What do you do?
Yeah.
And they don't even know what we do at that point. So it's sometimes it's a little weird, but I don't care about that. Right. Like,
it's so interesting because I get the same thing with the red hat.
Mhm.
They know the red hat. They know the red hat guy. They see the red hat at all the conferences and all the networking meetings and all of this and that, but they don't know what the red hat's all about. What do you even do, dude?
Yeah, it's a solid brand.
Yeah, well, is it? Because how do you convert that then? How have you managed to, you get that recognition, you get that attention, and the t-shirt, and we're going to describe it for those that are just listening. I mean, it's a smiley face that you literally built out of a set of headphones. You just took a yellow circle, turned a pair of over-the-ear canister headphones upside down. The earmuffs are the eyes, and then the headpiece is the smiley face. It's the most ingenious thing I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know if you debuted it beforehand, but I think the first time I saw it was at PodFest, maybe 22 or 21. How long is that?
Yeah, maybe 1 year, one of those years. Yeah.
Yeah, because I hadn't seen it before. And then you showed up at the next one. I was like, holy shit, that is amazing. And it's so simple.
These are actually my headphones. So like that I took, I sat there with like, with like pencils in it to hold it apart, and like get it to the right thing, and took the photograph. And I've got an amazing graphic designer, and I draw everything on crayons with him, and then he makes it into reality. So
it's funny because the first time I saw it, I didn't immediately realize it's a smiley face, and I walked past your exhibit, whatever we're gonna call it. I walked past it a few times, and then suddenly it hit me, and I'm like, oh my God, it's genius. And I love it.
Thanks.
I think one of the things that are commonly misunderstood with branded podcasts is that the podcast is supposed to be about the brand. And that's so incorrect, because if you were to start a podcast that all that you talk about is how to run an ad for your podcast, you're going to have one episode and then what do you talk about? But with a branded podcast, the idea is to talk about the values and the kinds of things that your brand stands for. So like if Jeep were to start a podcast, I think they have one. They talk about adventure and things like that, things that they really stand for, so that you start to think about those values in line with that brand. Mm-hmm. And that's something I think you guys do so well, because you do it really unconventionally. Like your brand is what MowPod does is help advertise podcasts. So you grow your podcast through advertisements, but your podcast is karaoke, because your brand values are things like the fun and the party and the music. And yet it works so well for you guys. You've just done such a great job at showing that those values and that alignment.
Well, thanks.
That's good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on our podcast. We just want to praise you for the next half hour. This would be amazing.
This is the Joe show today.
So I do want to throw in a couple of interesting facts, though. I think that a lot of people miss the mark when they go to events. Like you said earlier, there's thousands of exhibits at thousands of events across the country, and most of them are not very memorable at all. And it looks like, we do a software thing, and there's like a blue circle, and we stand there, and it's like, we have hand sanitizer, and and it's like, all right, great, fantastic. Like, I feel like they're doing that, and then do they get some business? Probably, right? Because that's the majority of the booths out there. It's like, all right, they got the pens with their logo on it. Fantastic. And that one next door's got hand sanitizer, and they got the bowl full of Hershey's Kisses. So that's cool. Oh, you missed that one? The Bowlful Hearts?
No, it's just that we have a conference coming up that we're sponsoring, and we're going to have a bowl of Rice Krispie treats. So now I'm feeling a little targeted right now.
That's
Joe.
what we were going to do, and I hard
Yikes.
vetoed. I am so excited for this one. We're going to be exhibitors.
Nice.
And I was really intentional with what we were going to do. And instead of it being something that's like a pen with a logo or something that everybody does, everything we're going to be giving away is actually handmade. Like so we're doing brand make your own brand, like friendship bracelet with your brand on it, and then handmade earrings that I'm making. And I'm just so excited about it because it's rare to go to a conference and not be handed something that's just so mass produced.
Right.
And it just makes it more personal and meaningful.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe I'm
just
just
love
weird.
making bracelets and earrings. That's just something that I love to do in my spare time.
So now between now and then, Larry, are you going to be sitting there with the string and...
Yes, sir. Just
with his girly hands, and when he's not making Legos, he will be making bracelets.
That needle. But Joe, going back to what you were saying, that everybody's just kind of doing the whole static thing. Can you continue on that train of thought? Because I interrupted, and I apologize for that because I think you're going to make a really valid point.
Yeah, every time I do a booth, and it doesn't have to be expensive. I've done plenty of booths on a budget. There's some nice booths out there where you're like, oh, the Spotify booth, and they have a freaking barista and a tiki bar, and it's like, oh man, that's beautiful, right? Like you go to the megaphone booth, you go to some, and they're like amazing, right? Like, and then you're like, fuck, I can't spend that kind of cash to make a booth. I'm not getting the reclaimed wood, right, to make my bar here, and like it's like, so you have to do what you have to do. And I've done plenty of booths where it's like, listen, you go to Amazon, you get some shit delivered, right? You get a couch, get a table, get something leather, right? Like get something nice, right? And like then when you're at the booth, put it on freaking Craigslist, put it on Facebook Marketplace in that local area or something, and sell it at the end. I've done this so many times. I'd buy a freaking couch, all sorts of things, and then just sell the stuff at the end. People back, pick it up on Sunday afternoon between 2 and 5 o'clock when the breakdown is, and people just walk in and be like, oh, here's your couch, bring a buddy, like get it out of here, and then I'd sell it for almost what I pay for it, and the booth cost almost nothing. But in the meantime, it looked great. There's definitely things you can do to make a really nice, fancy booth, or something at least creative, something that's off the charts like that people will remember for not a lot of money. I did a booth once, all right, and it was a huge conference, and there was tons of the big booths, right? Like all the big names were there, right? And I'm like, I can't compete with this. I got this little freaking 10 by 10 booth. I'm one of 500 of them, like how do I get some people to give a shit, right? When they just walk by and they don't want to make eye contact, right? They're walking by and you've done it, right? You're walking by the booth hall, you make eye contact, they're like, hey, how are you? Can I tell you about my, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, I don't want to, I just wanted to stare at your booth for a minute and see if you're giving out good swag, and then leave, right?
The amount of times I said, I just want to grab this, sorry, bye, and then I run in the other direction.
Yeah, I just need a pen. Sorry, can I take a hat with so I'm like, how do I not be that? Our thing was about like, don't flush your stuff, right? So I ordered 2 toilet bowls from Amazon and put up a big tile background, like the white tiles with graffiti all over it. And that was our booth. It was 2 toilets sitting there in the middle of the platform with the toilet cleaner next to it and the tank and everything, and the graffitied up wall behind me. And then of course I'm like, let me make this a little more fun. So I opened the toilet and filled it with ice, stuffed it with beers, and people would come by and be like, they do a double take and be like, what is going on here? What is happening? Right. So people had to stop and walk in. I'd be like, oh, come over here. I'll explain what we do. Come take a seat on the toilet next to me, and people would sit down on the toilet.
Very intimate setting.
Yeah, they'd sit down on the toilet next to me like, this is a little uncomfortable and weird. And their friends would sit there and take pictures of them.
Of course,
like,
that's social media right there. Yeah.
I mean, how many people came over? There must have been 1,000 pictures over those 4 days of people just sitting on the toilets and taking pictures of themselves, toilet selfies in our booth. And I would open the toilet and be like, hey, here you go. Here's a beer. And we would have a beer sitting there talking about business, drinking a beer out of the toilet, And it was like the best thing ever. And then of course at the end, I'm like, all right, how do I
sell the toilets?
Yeah, somebody's got to do this. So like the crew that worked at the hotel was like, what's with the toilets? I'm like, you need to remodel your bathroom. I'm like, take a toilet, And so they all took the toilets out of there, and they took the toilet brushes and cleaners. I didn't have to pay to get rid of all the stuff, because there's always like this cleanup fee at the hotel and blah blah blah. Yep, I didn't have to pay to get. They took it all away from me, and I just walked out of there and had a good time. And it cost me nothing, and it was just a booth that was like well thought out and silly and way off the charts, and everybody had to walk up there, and everybody took pictures with my big logo in the background, and pictures of us, and sat down in the toilets, and had to find out what we do because there's toilets sitting in the middle of the room, right? So you can definitely do things on a budget if you just think about it and just try to be a little creative.
I'm just thinking of when they got home, like to their wives, like, hey, honey, what'd you get at the conference? Oh, I got some pens and a notebook and a toilet.
Yeah, I drank beer out of a toilet.
That's my husband. Yep, that's my husband. I'm proud.
Yep.
So you got me going, okay, what are we going to do? Because we got that Spark Christian Media Conference that's coming up here in Houston in a couple of months at the end of September there. So I'm going, what can we do? Because I don't think toilets would go over well in the Christian community. It might be a little offensive there. So, probably got to think of something a little more wholesome. But we'll figure something out. So, Joe, do you have a book or anything, man? Because you're filled with all these ingenious ideas. And I think people could learn so much from you if you had a book. Is there something out there where people can read your and get an idea of what's going on in that big brain of yours?
I don't have a book. I would prefer them to listen to your podcast, actually. And
I love it.
Suck it all in,
I just tossed you a softball and you just hit a home run, man. I appreciate that.
For you.
So, that was amazing. Well, Joe, do us a favor, man. Tell us where people can find you, find out more about MowPod, and how they can reach out and talk to you, man.
Yeah, sure. So MowPod, if you have a podcast and you're looking to advertise it and get more people listening to your podcast, you can check us out at mowpod.com, MOWPOD.com. If you like to sing, and whether you're pretty good or great or not very good at all, and you want to check out our podcast, it is Friday Night Karaoke, and you can get that on all of the major podcasts. And if you're interested in actually singing with our group on Friday Night Karaoke, you go to Facebook and search for the Friday Night Karaoke Facebook group. It is free to join. We've got probably 16,000 people as members in our Friday Night Karaoke group, posting songs all the time. We pick a new theme of the week, and sometimes it's country, sometimes it's acoustic week, sometimes I think this week is punk week. So definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. And you don't have to sing. You can just listen and click like and add comments and listen to our podcast. So that's pretty much how to do it. So mowpod.com or check us out at Friday Night Karaoke on anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Amazing.
That's all you got? Amazing?
This is the part we're really good at. We're so good at the wrap up.
Oh my God.
No, it is just A+ every time.
Tell you what, Joe, that is amazing. I'm so glad that we had you on this episode of the podcast, sharing your insight into building a brand, building a community, and just thinking differently about your brand has been super, super insightful. And I'm confident that the audience has found a lot of value in it. And
I hope so.
Man, I know so. I just know so. So everybody that's listening, confirm that for me. If you found some value in this episode, do us all a favor right now. Smash that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you this amazing content each and every week. And with that, I'm Larry Roberts.
I'm Sara Lucy, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.